afternoon, everybody. Glad to see you all here this sunny day. I commented downstairs a minute ago that this is like Bethlehem in April. It looks warm. And then you step outside and the wind has a bit of a bite to it. Bethlehem is like that later in the spring. Today we're going to talk about the music of the Vleck sisters, which is a fascinating topic in and of itself. We get a lot of phone calls here where people are asking about, but what did the women play? What did the women write? What did the women do? And we don't have a lot of evidence about that from the 18th century, but we do from the middle and later 19th century. So here we go. It's often stated that for Moravians, music is an essential part of life, not just something incidental added on when the essential things have been taken care of. We've long known, as the great emphasis the Moravians also placed on education of boys and girls, of Cherokee and African American children, as well as Central Europe, those from Central European ancestry. Over the nearly 550 years since the founding of the Moravian Church, the emphases on music and education have woven together into a really rich, colorful history of music teaching and music making for and by women. The renewed Moravian Church in the 18th century followed Zinzendorf's recognition that men and women in different stages of life have different spiritual expressions, different spiritual needs and gifts, and they encouraged expressions of faith by women as well as by men. I don't know of Moravian women composers of sacred vocal music in the 18th century. But we do have an immense number of hymn texts written by women. In an informal overview, I was surprised to discover that the 1778 German hymnal has a higher percentage of hymns written by women than the 1995 Moravian hymnal does. And these are ones that we still know and love today, like Jesus Makes My Heart Rejoice. Hail, all hail, victorious Lord and Savior, the opening hymn of the Easter sunrise service. Many others that we know and still sing and love today. The value placed on music instruction within the curriculum of Moravian schools, I think, was rooted in the philosophy of John Amos Comenius, that education needed to include the introduction of music activities during the earliest years of childhood. Christian Latrobe in the late 18th and early 19th century wrote of students in Moravian schools being taught to consider the practice of music, whether vocal or instrumental, as leading to the same grand point, that is, the service of the Lord and the promotion of His glory here on earth. And Latrobe reminded his daughter Agnes that the effect of music upon the mind and heart may, under the guidance of God, be truly profitable in advancing our best interests. There's an immense collection of music manuscript books from the mid-18th through the mid-19th centuries that contain a wide variety of musical styles and genres: hymns, simple devotional songs, popular songs, piano music, waltzes, marches, ballads, airs from operas. Many of these appeared in these manuscript books very soon after they were published somewhere else. The Moravians then were very, very well versed in the popular music of their day. Come on in. Very well versed in the popular music of their day, and not only just what we'd call classical. The use of even what we'd consider secular music for pedagogy was possible for the Moravian educators, because they felt like in education, any music could be profitable as teaching. You could learn from anywhere. And many of these manuscript books were owned and copied by women. Music performance by the middle of the 19th century, music performance in the general culture, outside of the Moravian communities, piano music was regarded as one of the few public accomplishments that was appropriate for young ladies. At the Bethlehem School for Young Ladies, music instruction was the most popular of what they considered the ornamental branches of instruction. Becoming a music teacher was one of the few ways that a woman could respectfully earn an income, could be respectable and earn a good income. And the parents of many students at the school in Bethlehem insisted that their daughters learn music thoroughly, not just the ability to perform, but also the music theory and music history, so they could obtain teaching positions. And graduates from the Moravian schools, Salem and the Bethlehem Seminary, were very much sought after as music teachers in other schools. The difference between musical instruction for women and men, what did they do differently? Mostly in the instruments that one learned. At the female school in Bethlehem, women studied piano, melodeon, and guitar. By 1853, they could study organ. By 1858, they could study harp. At the same time, the men at Nazareth Hall studied organ, violin, flute, and other instruments. So the men students had opportunities to play in the school's orchestras and perform chamber music. The women students did not study orchestral instruments, but they did play piano duets, either four-hand or two-piano things. And there are also some transcriptions of piano concertos where the accompaniment is transcribed for a second piano that are in these manuscript books that these students played. Moravian-sponsored education for women was always ahead of its time. And this is an area we still need to study a great deal. To what extent did the Moravians really influence the musical culture of America, not just through their own compositions, but through the instruction of the daughters and sons of many non-Moravian families who then went on to become teachers and musicians in their own right? I think the Moravian instruction of music instruction, particularly for the women, is a little pebble dropped in a big cultural pond, and we don't know where all the ripples are going yet. Perhaps the most colorful women in Moravian music history are the three von Vleck sisters of the 19th century. They were born, of course, into a family of musical Moravian ministers spanning several generations, and all three inherited the musical gifts of their ancestors. There actually were 4 children in the family, the 3 sisters and a brother who died in 1863 as a prisoner of war. But our attention is on the 3 sisters. In order of age, here they are. Louisa Cornelia von Vleck was born on August 20th, 1826 in Bethania, where her father was pastor at the time. He accepted a call to serve a congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, and so her childhood was spent there. He later served in Lancaster and York, Pennsylvania, and she was educated at the School for Young Ladies in Bethlehem. Her father later served at Greenville, Tennessee as the president of a college for young women, and he died there in 1845, and then her mother moved the family back to Salem. Louisa, or Miss Lou as she was known, taught at the Salem Female Academy and at some other places. Her memoir states that the very atmosphere of school seemed to be necessary to her highest enjoyment of life. She was also very involved in the church, singing in the choir and teaching Sunday school. And her memoir reports that she gently fell asleep about 8 on Tuesday evening, April 22nd, 1902, and her face assumed a lovely look of repose from which the lines of care and mortal weakness were smoothed away, at the age of 75 years, 9 months, and 2 days. So from Miss Lou. Lisetta Marie von Vleck was born in Newport, Rhode Island, when her father was serving there. And her memoir reports that members of her family always spoke of her precociousness as a child, her remarkable memory, her unusual musical ability, which showed itself already at the age of 2 years old, where she sang a solo in the church of which her father was pastor. Like her older sister, she was educated at the Bethlehem School for Young Ladies. She sang in the choir, taught Sunday school, was an active member of the Women's Missionary Society, started teaching piano at age 16, and in 1852 began teaching at Salem and continued there until her marriage in 1868 to Moravian musician Alexander Meinung, himself a talented musician and artist. Her memoir reports, both brother and sister Meinung being gifted musicians, their home was for many years a music center in the community, and there many of the young people of Salem and vicinity received their first musical instruction and inspiration for future study. Brother Meinung died in 1908, so they had a 40-year marriage, and she continued to live in their house. And she continued to make many friends and used her musical gifts to give them much enjoyment. The end of her life, though, was a tragic one. The memoir reports, yesterday, September 19th, 1914 morning, shortly before noon, while attending to her usual household duties, our sister happened to a terrible accident. Her clothing caught fire while she was alone in the house, and ere assistance could reach her, she was fearfully burned. Though all that was done that could be done, she never rallied, and at about 4:30 o'clock, while her remaining sister sat by her bedside seeking to comfort her by her presence and gentle concern, her spirit passed quietly and peacefully into the Savior's presence at the age of 84 years, 5 months, and 6 days. The youngest of the sisters, Amelia Adelaide van Vleck, Miss Amy. She was born in 1835, was educated here at Salem, and at age 18 started teaching at Salem. She taught piano, guitar, and mandolin. She taught there for more than 60 years, one of the longest periods of continuing service at the history of Salem Academy and College, 60 years. And she shared her sister's interest in missions as a member of the Women's Missionary Society, accompanied the Sunday School for more than 50 years. If the Moravian Music Foundation had been around then, she certainly would have received the James V. Saltzwedel Award for Excellence in Church Music. Her special efforts for the Christmas entertainments and the evident joy in the services made a deep impression upon teachers and scholars, and the influence of it will abide for long, her memoir reports. She was known to be a rarely talented musician, a brilliant pianist, a composer of real merit, and one who used her talent in unstinted measure for the glory of God and the enjoyment and entertainment of her many friends. The announced coming of Miss Amy and Miss Lou, as the sisters were familiarly known, was an event in which the entire family was interested and gave promise always of an evening of pleasure and delight. All three of the sisters were generous donors to both the college and the church. Miss Amy gave the funds for the window in the college library in memory of her ancestor Samuel G. Crumpsch, and with her sister Lizetta gave the funds for the Ascension window in home church in memory of their ancestors Jacob van Vleck and William Henry van Vleck. For over 5 years, though, Miss Amy was a shut-in, receiving many visitors, and on Tuesday, August 20th, 1929, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she fell asleep in Jesus. Her age was 93 years, 10 months, and 2 days. Most of the compositions of these three talented women were written for really small forces: piano solo, songs with piano accompaniment. Many of the piano pieces also bear the names of other women. We have the Molly March, we have the Hannah Polka, we have the Louisa Polka. And I think, well, we haven't researched this yet, we think these pieces may well have been named for their friends. Maybe they were birthday presents. You know that, by the way, the text to Jesus Makes My Heart Rejoice, written by Henrietta Louisa von Hain, was written as a birthday present. So the idea of writing something and giving it to somebody else was certainly in the Moravian DNA. Most of the Van Vleck sisters' music survives only in their manuscript books. And I wonder if the manuscript books were something that they wrote in. Did they actually compose in these books and then maybe write out fair copies on separate sheets of paper to give to their friends? I don't know that, but it sounds like a reasonable hypothesis. There are very few published copies of the Van Vleck sisters' works. We have public copies of 2 of Miss Amy's compositions only in their published forms. The Centennial March for piano solo was dedicated to the faculty and pupils of the Salem Female Academy and College, presumably for the centennial celebration of that institution. By the way, Salem celebrated their centennial in 1905. And it was published by Hatch Music Company in Philadelphia. The copy of the Moravian Music Foundation, by the way, it has written on it, "Merry Xmas to dear Miss Holland from her friend Amy V.V." And the other piece that we just have in published form is the Irma Waltz, published in 1897 by Lewis H. Ross and Company of Boston. So Miss Amy's music, at least those two pieces were known beyond the Moravian community. I still wonder how many of their pieces are out there somewhere that we don't know about, and how many of their music students themselves became composers. I've talked enough now. Let's hear a little bit of Miss Amy's music. I want you to hear first a couple of pieces that she wrote for piano, and they were arranged for the regimental band of the 26th North Carolina Regiment by Edward Leinbach. So this is a waltz, and that's all it's titled in her book, Waltz. In case you're wondering who the pianist is, the pianist is a Dell computer down the hall, played off of the Finale music software, so that's not too bad. Anyway, so this piece was arranged, we believe, by Edward Leinbach for the regimental band and retitled. Brother Leinbach called it the Serenade Waltz, and we'll hear a little bit of that. Recognizable. But Brother Leinbach did some editing here. He changed a few notes from the piano manuscript. He made it a better piece. I hate to turn it off. The performers there are the American Brass Quintet Brass Band out of New York on our CD. Another a march that Miss Amy wrote was the Carolina March, which is also for piano, played by my computer. And this time what I'm walking around with is the regimental band version of that, so you can see a little bit about just the E-flat cornet trumpet part. And the regimental band version of that. Same key and everything. Yeah, yeah. It's the original. That's the key that it was originally written in, and then Edward Lineback kept the key.
Well, did she typically just write in certain keys?
I don't think so. I don't. I'd have to look overall, but I'm not sure.
When I played that Centennial March, seems like didn't it go into a section like B flat?
Yeah. It was like A flat to D flat or something. Which is what this one did. So.
Is D flat difficult for a band to play?
No.
Any flat key.
Any flat keys, all right. Yeah. I had to let it get to the end of the phrase. And now let me introduce to you our guest artist today, Brother Hal Garrison, who will sing two of Miss Amy's songs. First, a lullaby, and the second, Rainy Day.
Lullaby, lullaby, baby, day with its sunshine is past, and soon in the gloaming the Sandman is coming to scatter his sand thick and fast. So lullaby, lullaby, baby, and close your dear eyes just as tight, and then you won't see him, but only will feel him pass by in the shadowy night. Lullaby, lullaby, sleep, little baby, so dear. Lullaby, lullaby, darling, you've nothing to fear. Lullaby, lullaby, baby, mother is holding your hand. The angels are watching above you, my darling, while soft by their wings you are fanned. So lullaby, lullaby, baby, while fathers fond pledges for you, that sweetly you rest, by God ever blessed, and fresh as the morn wake anew. Lullaby, lullaby, birdies have all gone to rest. You must go to, so good night to you. The sun has sunk low in the west. wind is never weary, the vine still clings to the moldering old, but at every gust the dead leaves fall, and the day is dark and dreary. My life is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. My thoughts still cling to the moldering past, but the hopes of youth fall thick in the blast, and my life is dark and dreary. Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy light, the common lot of all, into each life some rain must fall, some days must be dark and
Did she write only in English?
Yes, Yep, everything we have of hers is English. Oh, and by the way, the text there is Longfellow. So throughout our more than 550 years, we Moravian women have been musicians. We have sung and played, we have taught and learned, we have copied and composed. We have preserved our musical traditions in our homes, in our schools, in our churches, and in our archives. While we have not composed to the extent in terms of number of compositions, variety of genres, and degree of public recognition as our Moravian brothers have, we have used our musical gifts as we've used all of our gifts in the life of our community of faith, in our families, in our service of our Lord and of His church. There is a great deal more to be learned about the Vleck sisters and their music. Thank you very much. Next month, we hear from Brother Starbuck about Winston-Salem, Centennial of a Merger. So Brother Starbuck holds forth on the second Thursday of April. Thank you much for coming this afternoon.